All right, perfect. We are here. We're just a few days away from the game. It's a big one, and I'm joined by my frenemy from Detroit on this fine evening. Garrett, how are you? Tell us
Uh,
about what's going on. Don't
Carlos,
tell us about Detroit City yet. Don't tell us about Detroit City yet. We'll get there. How are you? What's going on?
I'm doing great. Today's my Friday. I do not go back to work until Monday the 9th.
Mhm.
And it is going to be, so it's good there. Can't complain. And I know not just our matchup on Saturday, but it is a busy Detroit City weekend because our W League team is hosting the Central Conference playoffs.
Nice.
So Minnesota Aurora in the 11, us
Okay.
Riverlight. So we've got two semifinals on Friday. Our game Saturday night, and then the winners of the semifinals on Friday play Sunday at 1, all at Keyworth. So it
Damn.
it is going to be a event filled holiday weekend. Plenty of opportunities for fireworks.
Oh man. Oh man, that's full weekend of soccer. If there wasn't enough soccer already this summer, Garrett,
Oh yeah,
seems like there's plenty going on in Detroit.
for sure.
Okay. That seems like a blast, actually. I'm so excited, by the way. Tangent, for our USL women's team to join up very, very soon. That's gonna be so much fun. Shout out Tembe Sun. Shout out our Sun podcast. Go listen to them. It's gonna be a blast. Okay, Garrett, we're here. We're talking about this game. It's a big one. We've been hinting at it for a little bit. Let's jump into it because, like we talked about right before we started recording, I think the average Rowdies fan might not know a ton about most other teams in the USL. We've heard about Detroit City. It's a good brand. It's a great team, great fan base. I want to ask you about the environment at Keyworth later on. So get ready for that.
Absolutely.
Um, but let's talk about just generally how Detroit's season has been up to this point. We're almost halfway through the year. You've got 2 games in hand on this, so it's a big one. But we're both almost halfway through the year. Let's evaluate. Where's Detroit at right now? How would you evaluate the season off about halfway through the year?
I think one thing to note going into it is that this is a bit of a different Detroit City side, as opposed to maybe Rowdies fans would come to expect the last 2 years of playing City. Um, After the end of the 2023 season, Trevor James stepped aside from coaching, went fully into the role of sporting director, which meant bringing on Danny Dicchio, who Rowdies fans may recognize as Sacramento's first team coach the last 2 seasons under Mark Briggs, but being kind of a lot of the architect for what Republic really did those 2 years, including getting to the Open Cup final. With that change in leadership on the field also came a change of philosophy and a way of attacking. I am completely okay with saying that you guys have whooped our ass on the field a lot of times the last 2 years. Maybe
Okay.
one time on the scoreboard, but you there was clear cut winners. You knew I felt like in that game, especially the game August of 22 in Tampa. So with that, a little bit more aggressive in our style of play. That includes kind of with our recruiting with players, Elvis Almo coming on, getting in James Murphy, um, Alex Villanueva, Carlos Saldana in goal to give some, Nate Steinwasser breaks when he needs to, Matt Sheldon for veteran presence, and Ryan Williams, who's had veteran experience playing in various parts of the UK and even around the world. So with that intent, we've become a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more. I say we channel our. I always talk about it in the Lions since they play like their head coach, and I felt like when under Trevor James is an absolute gentleman of a human being, and I felt like we were always a nice team, nice
Mm,
gentleman, not on there. Dan Deco is also a nice guy, but he's also an intense manager, and
mm,
you see that really fully across. I think when you see this iteration of the city team, if you've seen any of the matches on there, how we're not afraid to get into a challenge, we're not afraid to
sure.
scrap and fight. And this year, we had a little bit of a brief stretch when Elvis Amo got hurt and when Reese Williams got hurt, both in April against North Carolina. Reese had a fractured cheekbone, so he was out for a month. He came back in the game against Phoenix in May. Elvis Amo had his hip adductor tore off his bone,
Mm,
so he just came back the game at Rhode Island, second weekend in June, and since then we've kind of gotten our rhythm back. We had a game that I think we gave away last Wednesday against Legion. Um, had a little bit of an illness, but regardless with some guys, but regardless of that, I say the second half on Wednesday, we didn't play to win, we played not to lose. And Legion made the adjustments, and you've played Legion, I think, twice this year already. I don't think you've played them 3 times yet, but
Yeah.
Legion, you can't, if you don't kill them off, or even when you think you've killed Legion off, they find a way to fight back this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they did that in the 83rd and the 88th minute against us. So thankfully, we had it Saturday. We were able to get a goal early and then take over the game against Miami, which I think in years past we've often played down to our opponents.
Sure.
So to come into that, to come off a 4-0 away win, a rotated side, get some legs moving. I think this is going to now maybe the best time that we can get, especially with this busy run for us to be playing Tampa.
I'll tell you what, Rowdies fans know a little bit about Birmingham Legion being resilient, to say the least. If you remember that 4-goal comeback,
we were
last,
recording live because we had been Dynamo the night before, and just like eyeballing everything because we were wondering what Rising were doing because they were at North Carolina and they had to go 120 like us, and then I was like, wait a minute, you guys were up, what's going on? And then, but
that whole game was a wild one. And then going extra time, Arteaga gets a bicycle kick to take the lead. Insane. That was a wild one. And then okay, good to know. Let me ask you a little bit about a couple players to watch, because this was a guy that I always knew had talent. I never expected him to be a team's like leading goal scorer off the bat. That's a guy like Maxi Rodriguez, and he's kind of taken Detroit City's attack by storm, right? 7 goals. He's leading goal scorer. The next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys all have 2 goals. Plenty of attacking talent kind of spread out here. But maybe tell us a little bit about Maxi Rodriguez's role in this team and kind of why he stood out as such a dog right now. 7 goals to lead the team.
7 in league play, and then when you get in, he's got that 2 more from the Open Cup as well. So, if anything, this year we've had Maxi Rodriguez join Detroit City in 2021 for our final season in NISA, and for even up to this year, we've been seeing him a lot as as kind of a pivot guy, a mainly holding midfielder guy, a 6 to an 8, basically. If you're going to use the American continental European phrase for a holding midfielder, as opposed to Isles will say 4. But I remember watching highlights when we were at Riverhounds in 22, the day after we were there, and I think it was Devin Kerr was talking in the broadcast about talking with Trevor James, and it was either Kerr or Watts, but they were talking about how Trevor could see Maxi being not just a 6 or an 8, but maybe a 10, number 10 role. And so this year with Danny coming on, he wanted to play Maxi further up the pitch. And earlier on in the year, we were kind of doing that 4-2-3-1 double pivot, but Maxi would be the 10. But what's even more impressive is last year, Ben Morris was our number 9. He's featured more wide this year, more comfortable role for him as a winner. But when we go off the ball, Maxi will kind of go up with whoever's playing up top. And lately, we seem to go into that 4-4-2 variation, whether it's a diamond or a box. And he's just relishing that playing higher up in the pitch and movement and on there. And I think this last game coming on as a sub and being able to bag a brace. Yeah. Some of my friends that were chatting were like wondering, why are we putting him on in this game at 2-0 up? And immediately in my mind, because and after what I talked about last week, I'm like, keep the foot on the gas, kill the game. And then you saw that instinct. So he's playing some of the best football we've seen him play, and the fact that he's already almost at his goal total in USL Championship play from 22, and he's already got 3 more than all league season last year. Incredibly impressive. I think you're also. I don't know if you want me to keep segueing the players to watch while we're going.
Please. I'm going to ask you about a few, but you're probably going to knock them out right here. So let's go for it. Take it away.
So I've talked about Ben Morris shifting from an out-and-out striker to a wing role. Morris has got 2 goals, 4 assists this year. Becoming a bit more comfortable in there. Both his goals have been outside the box, wonder strikes. I was just shocked every time. I'm like, wait, that went in? Okay. But another player that's also benefited from being a further up the pitch is Reese Williams, who's bagged goals in the last 2 games. He was often, when he signed, we played against him in Nisa in 2021 when he was with Stumptown AC, who have since ceased to exist, like a lot of Nisa clubs.
Rest in peace.
Yep. Actually, I was that proud that I went to that away game in the fall of 21, but different side, different story for that. But Reese was a wingback for many years, or a fullback, or a out and out, just out and out midfielder wide. Sometimes he
Okay.
plays center right. This year, when Danny's either brought him on as a sub or he started, Reese has been playing as a winner, high up the pitch, being involved in attack. He used to never be comfortable with shooting. Now he's shooting, and now he's getting goals. So I think he's coming in the form at the great time on there. I would say another guy to really look out for, Elijah. Rowdies fans may know that our 1 goal we scored in the 2 games against Rowdies last year came from Elijah free kick at our line, which was the only highlight for Detroit City in that match. But he's somebody that's coming. It's still young and developing and really coming into his game, and somebody that is getting encouraged by the Gaff to use his explosiveness more.
Okay.
Have that ability. We've seen him play as a pivot next to James Murphy, who I love tenacity, just my grit guy.
Yeah.
He'd be a great Detroit Lion. That's all I'm saying. But you're also seeing Lai start to play wide when called upon. So I think those are like my 3 I'd keep an eye on.
Sure.
Carl Saldana had been playing in goal a bit, and he's been doing well. We put Nate Steinwasser back in on Saturday. Got the clean sheet. Nate also featured in the club's friendly against Pumas, Liga MX, last Saturday the 22nd, 1-0 win for us then, and he made a whole bunch of saves. I didn't know if Carlos was back in goal because of issue. It made it sound like Nate was one of the people dealing with a bug last Wednesday. So I don't know if Danny might play matchups on keepers, because we're in a good situation now where we never really had this before. 2 keepers, 2 incredibly quality goalkeepers, one who's been proven established, been the guy that if he's not the top goalkeeper in USL Championship, he's there with, in my opinion, with like a Paul Blanchett or Jordan Farr for you guys. Those type of guys
Sure.
that are hugely successful to their team. But Carlos Saldana seemed to also relish the opportunities when he's been given. So I think that will be interesting. But I would say, apart from keeper battle, Maxi, Reese, and Lai are my 3 that I would probably say Rowdy fans see how they're going to play for that game.
Good to know. There's a guy that Rowdies fans will certainly be scared of, remembering the name Elvis Amo from his time with Hartford last year. I don't know if you recall this game.
He had a banner against you, if I recall.
Yeah, it was an insane goal in a game where Hartford came in, I think, with like a bunch of guys with COVID. They had to hire an emergency goalie, and somehow Hartford almost ran out of there with a point. But thankfully, a name that was no longer with the team, Ariel Martinez, got a 90th minute winner in that one. So that's a guy that I personally am scared of, because we've seen his talent. And him coming off the bench, it looks like he came off the bench against Miami. That's a weapon off the bench. I'll tell you what, Garrett.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 ways. He's just coming back from that injury. So
Yeah.
I think the question that we'll see is, I would not be surprised if he starts, just because I'm thinking this is kind of like, I would see, like, I think this is a game like Legion where you want to somebody's got to set the tone early. So you guys start with as much as your guys as possible. If we're not going to put Elvis up top, then it might be either like a Victor Becerra or maybe Yazid Matthews. Yazid Matthews is what I call, is definitely your bull in the China shop guy. Somebody who's 6'2", 6'3", a hard worker. But his role, and when he comes on, he's got moments in him, but he creates space for other people. And
Sure,
if you're
sure.
Rodriguez, if you're Ben Morris, if you're like those type of guys that can benefit. But if you have Elvis and Mo starting and ready to roll, that is our hold up. That benefits our hold up play. That benefits our approach to the match. That benefits our distribution, and it benefits a lot of things.
Yeah. We chatted with James and I chatted with Cal Jennings earlier. Obviously, Rowdy's forward about what Detroit City's strengths are. We talked about maybe what we need to do to beat this really kind of pretty good informed Detroit squad right now, like you said, kind of finding its rhythm now. A couple guys coming back from injury. If you're Detroit, which you're obviously a Detroit City fan, if you're in the shoes of Dikio, um, what do you think you need to do to come out and win this game at home against this Rowdy squad?
I think you need to kind of look at, and I've seen part of me seen like from what I've paid attention from you guys this year. You've had highs, really good highs, beating Louisville. You know, having winning a few games in the cup in those matches. But then there's also the other times you've had roots. I watched the highlights from Loudon, and I think if anything is if we sit back, I think it benefits you guys. It benefits Charlie Dennis. It benefits Cal Jennings if he's on. It benefits Artiaga if you start on him. But if we can keep the drive going, if we can keep the mentality, try to win the battle in the midfield, kind of like what we were doing to an extent against Charleston Battery a few weeks back.
Big
If
win.
yeah, if you take the midfield, if you keep the pace, don't really think more north. Think about it like more hockey style, more north south. If we can go north south with the movement, but not just try to like blast it unless it makes sense to blast it. Try to do that. We know you guys have a physical squad, but I feel like there's a moments like it's also like what team's gonna like slip first. Our
Yeah.
weakness has been a lot of times mental lapses in moments. And I think that's a parallel, I think, to maybe some of the things you've experienced too for this year is lapses in moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who's going to slip up first in that?
Mm.
I think that will kind of be something to take note of. I
Yeah.
feel.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. I like that. Who's going to slip up first? Because, like you said, you've had more than a few little lapses of momentary judgment that lead to a silly goal, a silly mistake, and dropped points against teams that I think we would normally beat. Okay. Let me ask you before we start to wrap things up here. Keyworth is a special place. It's a place on my bucket list. I want to get up there one day. Looks like a
Yeah.
fun time in Detroit. Before we start to wrap up here, just tell us a little bit about for the Rowdies fan that's never been there, for the USL fan who's heard about it. What do you think makes Keyworth special? Maybe a bit challenging for the Rowdies player going in there this Saturday.
One thing to note about Keyworth is it is a throwback stadium. It's an old ass stadium. I think 1936. It was when it was
Nice.
inaugurated by President at the time, Franklin Roosevelt. Um, and it's something that what blew my mind to it. My first time ever going to Keyworth was 2017. I just gotten back from seeing Crystal Palace play in London, Sellers Park, and you're in the stadium within the neighborhood. You got all this stuff, right? And a few days before, the club had a friendly with Northern Irish side Glentoran. I was doing site visit for work for a conference that was taking place there. And I see the stadium that reminds me a lot of where I was just at. You're in this neighborhood and literally at the end of the streets, this stadium that,
Yeah.
I think I referred to it on Hammer and Down last week as simple yet significant. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing stadium. I'll tell you that. And there are things that it's eyes show, but I also know that this is where we helped the club and supporters helped renovate it to be ready for City to play in and get it ready to go. So Hamtramck, it's under the Hamtramck School Board. We only have a couple more years at that place as with our getting line for a new stadium, eventually starting work on it, hoping to have it up by 2027. So I would say when you go to Keyworth is it's like I say, simple yet significant.
Mm.
Because it's it's not the prettiest atmosphere, may not be the most full of aesthetics or I don't say customer friendly, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
You're
understand.
there to enjoy all the different food trucks that come in the concourse, all the weather for. You can get Polish, you can get Mediterranean, you can get
Nice.
Balkan, you can get East African, you can get Mexican tacos, all of that. You can get all of that, and a friendly pricing, and taking it, and you just take in a match, and as opposed to maybe having supporters behind the goal, you get to see them, right? Like your view that you watch in the camera at Keyworth, you know, whether it's Northern Guard supporters or anyone else there that's on that supporter side, is you see them front full on, unedited, uncensored, smoky when goals are in the back of the net, and it's
Yeah.
a fun special experience to take in. And I'm really happy this year that that the teams itself seems to be taking advantage of
Yeah.
that home advantage more, because I felt like in years past it would benefit away teams more, because away teams are like, let's go, this is like a cup match, take this
Yeah.
atmosphere.
Yeah.
And we didn't have, I think, the killer edge mentality that you should have when you have that type of atmosphere.
Mm.
You guys probably have the same thing with outlying with their historic value, and Ralph's Mob and all that. It's when you know what you got, and you see that level of passion, commitment from people in the stands or people involved with not just working at the club, but even being involved with the club and the thing, and the club recognizing that. Like,
Yeah.
the fact that I get to see a match where I am because of what we're doing right now is a cool thing,
For
and
sure.
it's appreciative, and that's, I think, special, especially when you look at a lot of other things going on in American soccer, or what we wouldn't, like last night, for example, or other things, right? It's those type of
Yeah.
things that you take in and you cherish. And that's what. Long story short, if you have the opportunity to come to Keyworth, come to it. You're coming to see a match, take in the match, take it all in. Um, Simple yet significant.
Mm. I like that. You can put that on a t-shirt. I'm telling you. Put it on
Mad
your.
Men. I blame Mad Men season 4 all those years ago when that line on there was like, oh, that applies to life.
Yeah, there you go. Well, there you have it. If you haven't been to Keyworth, your time's running out. But get up there. If you're in the area, if your team is playing over there, can't think of many better road trips in the USL. There's a few big ones I always put on my bucket list. I always like to get to. Louisville is a great one with that stadium over there. There's plenty of other scenic stadiums, but Detroit City always seems like a place that should be on your list. And if you haven't gone, get out there. It seems like a special place for sure. Okay, Garrett, before we wrap up, is there anything you want to throw in here? Anything you want to plug? Anything that any Rowdies fans should check out maybe before we head over to watch this game this weekend?
I would just say, if any Rowdy fans are in town early, like say Friday and that, there is our women's team, USLW League conference playoffs are starting Friday. So there is 2 matchups, 4 and 7. You know, it's Indy 11's women's team versus Minnesota Aurora, and Detroit City versus River Light. I think they're out of Aurora, Illinois. And I think it's like $10 for tickets, and if winners of those play in a final on Sunday at 1. So just a shout out to our women's team. They've really showed up and stepped out on being regular season. Just it's a talented group of players led by a talented group of individuals. So I want to give a shout out and congrats to them. And other than that, yeah, just I think I'm really looking forward to this match on Saturday. I
Yeah,
think I think it's a good test to see where not just us, but where you guys are at this year. We're about to for us personally, we're about to hit a heavy stretch of matches. We're catching up on matches.
yeah,
Like, I know we got to go to St. Pete in the summer. So from now to the end of August, it's going to be a lot. So
yeah.
I'd say looking for that. Did you want me to plug where, if anyone?
Please.
Yep. So a couple ways you can check out for Detroit City content for what we do. So our main Detroit City centric stuff is channel 451. At YouTube, I think it's at 451 Detroit. I think it's at 451 Detroit and number 3. I'm never get those completely right. But there's Tunnel Talk, which is our weekly episodes. I think we're doing something tomorrow night. We've often started doing some live YouTube stuff called the throw-ins, which is sometimes whether it's post-match recaps or just live on there. So for there, and also the video shorts I do molding over City, which is just basically like either updates, opinion pieces, and stuff on there. Our Twitter handle for that's at 451DET. So I say it's like pro wrestling. It's a mix of sports and a mix of entertainment. Sometimes you know what you're going to get. And then we also do Detroit City coverage with the rest of the teams in the city, part of the Majors Detroit, which 451 is part of. That's, straight up, I call supporter journalism. At TMSNX Detroit, and then the Majors, that links on there. But we have regular recaps. I think we're recording our Detroit City Sportscast later on this evening, and we're gonna have a special. We have a piece with writer, well-known city writer for us, Sean Spence, who has a great Patreon I recommend, called Words About Shapes, which is great for like football and a mix of that. That, like I said, so highly recommend the $3 a month subscription for anyone that's wanting to get you can delve into the mindset on there and also like get a unique experience about matchups on there. But that special is going to be later on in the week. We're going to be talking about this match and also the women's matchups ahead. Not just women's match, but the Rowdies and Les Rouges Saturday night at Keyworth. So
it'll be a good one. Tune in or go to Detroit. It'll be a fun one. It's a fun place, I'm sure. I wish I could be there. I always think about Detroit City's like NPSL days, by the way, and like these like college kids going to a raucous atmosphere like that. Can you imagine that? That's crazy.
That's kind of like, and the funny thing about it, why I like to promote the women is it's because it's like we get to visit this again in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like 2 months a year. And you have high school players, you have college, and
that's awesome.
You don't know what you're going to get.
That's awesome. That's special for sure. All right. It'll be a fun one this weekend. I'm hoping, obviously, for a Rowdies win, but it's a big one. It could be a big, big swing in terms of where we see ourselves finishing at the end of the year on the table. Garrett, thanks for joining us. I appreciate your time. We're looking forward for a good one this Saturday.
Indeed. Thanks for having me on. It's always great to talk football with always down for a good conversation. Any Rowdies fans that make the trip into Detroit on there, I'll be in the media tent on the corner by kind of like where the section's at. Just look for my tall, scraggly self. I might be wearing a cowboy hat, something like that. But
there you go.
Have fun on there, and everyone have a great 4th.
Great. Well, have a good one. Have a good game this weekend, and let's hope for a Rowdies win. Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.